Question 1. The dimension of behavior that refers to the time elapsed between the end of one instance of a behavior and the beginning of the next instance of the same behavior is called A. Latency. B. Duration. C. Frequency. D. Interresponse time, IRT. Answer: D. Interresponse time, IRT. This question is asking about a specific way to measure behavior called interresponse time, IRT. IRT is the time measured between two occurrences of the same behavior. The keywords are time elapsed between the end of one instance and the beginning of the next instance of the same behavior. For example, if a child taps the table, then 5 seconds pass, and they tap the table again, the IRT is 5 seconds. Latency is the time from a stimulus to the start of a behavior. Duration is how long a behavior lasts, and frequency is the count of behaviors. IRT is all about the time between consecutive behaviors. Question 2. When implementing an intervention, what is the behavior you are trying to change called? A. Target behavior. B. Replacement behavior. C. Problem behavior. D. Functional behavior. Answer: A. Target behavior. This question asks for the general term for the behavior you are focusing on in an intervention. The behavior you are trying to either increase or decrease is called the target behavior. It's the specific behavior that is the target of your efforts. While it might be a problem behavior you want to reduce or a replacement behavior you want to increase, the overarching term for the behavior you're working on is the target behavior. A clear target behavior definition is essential before you start measuring or intervening. Question 3. In the three-term contingency, what does the C stand for? A. Cause. B. Criteria. C. Condition. D. Consequence. Answer: D. Consequence. This question is about the final part of the basic three-term contingency model, a BC. The C stands for consequence, which is anything that happens immediately after a behavior occurs. Consequences are incredibly important in ABA because they determine whether the behavior is more or less likely to happen again in the future, through reinforcement or punishment. For example, if you finish a task, behavior, and immediately get praised, consequence, that consequence influences future task completion. The consequence happens after the behavior. Question 4. A type of graph used in ABA that shows the total number of responses emitted over time is called A. Bar graph. B. Scatter plot. C. Cumulative record. D. Pie chart. Answer: C. Cumulative record. This question asks about a specific type of graph commonly used in behavior analysis. A cumulative record is a line graph that shows the total number of responses over time, where the line never decreases because each data point adds to the previous total. The steeper the slope of the line, the higher the rate of the behavior. It's a unique way to visualize rate and progress towards a total goal. Bar graphs compare different conditions, scatter plots show relationships, and pie charts show parts of a whole. Cumulative records are specifically designed to show cumulative responses over time. Question 5. What is the process called when a stimulus, such as a sound or touch, consistently causes an involuntary response, like a reflex? A. Operant conditioning. B. Extinction. C. Respondent conditioning. D. Shaping. Answer: C. Respondent conditioning. This question describes respondent conditioning, also known as classical or Pavlovian conditioning. This type of learning involves associating a neutral stimulus with a stimulus that naturally elicits an involuntary response, like reflexes, fear responses, or salivation. After pairing, the previously neutral stimulus alone will come to elicit that response. The clue here is consistently causes an involuntary response, like reflex. Operant conditioning deals with voluntary behaviors controlled by consequences. Extinction is reducing behavior by withholding reinforcement. Shaping is teaching new behaviors through approximations. Respondent conditioning is about learned involuntary responses. Question 6. A client is learning to tie their shoes. The therapist uses a task analysis to break down the skill into 10 steps. They teach the client step 1, then step 1 and 2, then 1, 2, and 3, and so on, reinforcing successful completion of the learned sequence. This is an example of A. Backward chaining, B. Forward chaining, C. Total task presentation, D. Shaping. Answer: B. Forward chaining. This question describes the teaching procedure called forward chaining. In forward chaining, you break a multi-step skill into smaller steps using a task analysis. You teach the steps in their natural order. Starting with the first step, you prompt the learner through the rest of the steps, but you reinforce the learner for successfully completing the first step independently. Once the first step is mastered, you teach the first 2 steps, reinforcing after the second step is completed, and continue moving forward through the chain. Backward chaining starts from the last step, and total task teaches all steps at once. This example clearly starts teaching the sequence from the beginning. Question 7. Which measurement method is used to determine the percentage of intervals during which a behavior occurred at any point within the interval? A. Whole interval recording, B. Momentary time sampling, C. Partial interval recording, D. Duration recording. Answer: C. Partial interval recording. This question describes partial interval recording. In this time sampling method, you divide the observation period into intervals. Example, 1 minute. You then look at each interval and record a plus if the behavior occurred at any point during that interval, even just for a second. This method tends to overestimate the occurrence of the behavior. Whole interval requires the behavior throughout the interval. Momentary time sampling looks only at the end of the interval, and duration measures how long the behavior lasts. Partial interval is about whether the behavior happened in any part of the interval. Question 8. What is the main reason for defining behavior in clear, observable, and measurable terms? A. To make data collection easier. B. To ensure consistency among observers. C. To identify the function of the behavior. D. To determine the most effective reinforcer. Answer: B. To ensure consistency among observers. This question emphasizes the importance of a good behavior definition. While a clear definition can eventually make data collection easier and is necessary before identifying function or reinforcers, its primary benefit, especially when multiple people might be observing or implementing plans, is to ensure consistency, reliability in identifying and measuring the behavior. If everyone knows exactly what the behavior looks like and what counts, you can trust that the data collected by different people or at different times is measuring the same thing accurately. Consistency is key for reliable data. Question 9. When using differential reinforcement, you reinforce a desired behavior while simultaneously putting the problem behavior on extinction. What principle explains why putting the problem behavior on extinction is necessary for differential reinforcement to be most effective? A. Positive punishment. B. Satiation. C. The matching law. D. Establishing operation. Answer: C. The matching law. This question delves slightly deeper into how reinforcement influences behavior allocation, touching on the matching law. The matching law states that the relative rate of responding on a particular response alternative is equal to the relative rate of reinforcement for that response alternative. In simpler terms, individuals tend to match their behavior distribution to the rate of reinforcement they get for different options. When using differential reinforcement, you are making the desired behavior more reinforcing than the problem behavior. Putting the problem behavior on extinction, reducing its reinforcement to 0 or near 0, is crucial because, according to the matching law, this makes the relative reinforcement for the desired behavior much higher, making the learner more likely to match the higher reinforcement rate by engaging in the desired behavior more often than the problem behavior. Question 10. What is the term for a stimulus that signals the absence of reinforcement for a specific behavior? A. Discriminative stimulus, SD. B. Conditioned reinforcer. C. S delta, SD. D. Motivating operation, MO. Answer C. S delta, SD. This question asks for the term that describes a stimulus indicating that reinforcement is not available. An S delta, SD, is a stimulus in whose presence a particular behavior has not been reinforced in the past. It's essentially a signal that says, don't do that behavior now, you won't get the payoff. The opposite is an SD. Discriminative stimulus, which signals that reinforcement is available for a specific behavior. Conditioned reinforcers are learned rewards, and MOs change motivation. An S delta tells you no reinforcement here. Question 11. Which type of prompt involves providing a verbal instruction or cue to the learner? A. Physical prompt. B. Gestural prompt. C. Verbal prompt. D. Model prompt. Answer C. Verbal prompt. This question asks about one of the common types of prompts. A verbal prompt is any spoken word, phrase, or sentence that helps cue the learner to make the correct response. Saying touch your nose is a verbal prompt. Physical prompts involve touch, gestural prompts involve movements like pointing, and model prompts involve demonstrating the behavior. Verbal prompts are simply providing spoken guidance. Question 12. A parent wants to reduce their child's whining. Every time the child whines, the parent turns their back and walks away, providing no attention. The child's whining decreases over time. This is an example of implementing A. Positive reinforcement. B. Positive punishment. C. Negative punishment. D. Extinction of attention-maintained behavior. Answer D. Extinction of attention-maintained behavior. This scenario describes implementing extinction for a behavior maintained by attention. The child's whining was likely being reinforced by parent attention in the past. By turning away and providing no attention when the child whines, the parent is withholding the reinforcement that was maintaining the whining behavior. As a result, the behavior decreases through extinction. This isn't punishment because nothing is being added or removed contingent on the behavior to decrease it. Rather, the previously reinforcing consequence is being withheld. It's letting the behavior no longer work to get attention. Question 13. What is the primary advantage of using a functional analysis compared to descriptive assessments, like ABC data, when determining the function of a behavior? A. Functional analysis is quicker to conduct. B. Functional analysis can demonstrate a clear cause and effect relationship between the environment and the behavior. C. Functional analysis relies on subjective reports. D. Functional analysis is less likely to produce an extinction burst. Answer B. Functional analysis can demonstrate a clear cause and effect relationship between the environment and the behavior. This question asks about the main strength of a functional analysis, FA. The key advantage of an FA is that it allows researchers or analysts to directly test hypotheses about behavior function by systematically manipulating environmental conditions, antecedents, and consequences in a controlled way. This manipulation helps demonstrate a clear cause and effect, functional relationship between specific environmental variables and the occurrence of the behavior. Descriptive assessments can show correlations, but only an FA can definitively show causation by controlling and changing the variables. Question 14. When collecting data on a behavior, if two independent observers collect data on the same behavior at the same time and their data are very similar, this indicates A. Low reliability. B. High reliability. Inter-observer agreement. C. The intervention is working. D. The behavior is functional. Answer B. High reliability. Inter-observer agreement. This question describes a scenario where data collection has high reliability, specifically demonstrated through high inter-observer agreement, IOA. Reliability in measurement means consistency. When two observers independently measure the same thing and get very similar results, it means their measurement is consistent and therefore reliable. High IOA increases confidence that the behavior definition is clear and the measurement system is being used correctly. It doesn't directly tell you if the intervention is effective or why the behavior is happening, but it assures you that your measurement itself is dependable. Question 15. Using a task analysis to break down a skill into smaller steps is the first part of implementing which teaching procedures? A. Shaping. B. Discrimination training. C. Chaining. Forward, backward, total task. D. Generalization. Answer: C. Chaining. Forward, backward, total task. This question connects the task analysis process to the procedures it enables. A task analysis is the process of identifying and listing the smaller individual steps that make up a complex skill. This list of steps is the foundation for teaching that skill using chaining procedures, such as forward chaining, backward chaining, or total task presentation. These procedures involve teaching the learner to perform the steps in the correct sequence. Shaping teaches a single behavior, discrimination training teaches different responses to different stimuli, and generalization is the spread of behavior. Task analysis is explicitly for setting up chaining. Question 16. Which type of consequence is defined by its effect on increasing the future frequency of a behavior, regardless of whether something was added or removed? A. Punishment. B. Reinforcement. C. Antecedent. D. Stimulus. Answer: B. Reinforcement. This question defines reinforcement. Reinforcement, whether positive, adding something, or negative, removing something, is always defined by its effect on behavior. It makes the behavior it follows more likely to occur in the future. The specific type, positive or negative, tells you how the consequence was delivered, added, or removed. But the overarching principle of reinforcement is the increase in future behavior. Punishment decreases behavior. Antecedents come before behavior. Stimuli are things in the environment. Reinforcement is all about increasing behavior. Question 17. A child tantrums when asked to transition from playing to cleaning up. The tantrums consistently result in the child being allowed to continue playing. In this situation, the tantrum behavior is most likely maintained by A. Access to tangibles. B. Attention. C. Escape from demand. D. Automatic reinforcement. Answer: C. Escape from demand. This scenario describes a behavior maintained by negative reinforcement, specifically escape. The antecedent is being asked to transition, a demandee. The behavior is tantruming. The consequence is being allowed to continue playing, which means the child is escaping or avoiding the demand to clean up. Since this consequence, escape, makes the tantruming more likely in the future when faced with similar transitions, the behavior is maintained by escape. Access to tangibles would be getting an item. Attention is social interaction. Automatic reinforcement doesn't involve others. Question 18. When teaching a new skill, a therapist positions their body next to the learner or points to the materials needed for the next step. This type of prompt is A. Verbal prompt. B. Physical prompt. C. Gestural prompt. D. Model prompt. Answer: C. Gestural prompt. This question asks about the type of prompt used. A gestural prompt involves the therapist making a movement or gesture to guide the learner, without physical contact. Pointing, nodding, or even positioning oneself in a way that cues the next action, like standing near the materials, are examples of gestural prompts. Verbal prompts use words, physical prompts involve touch, and model prompts show the behavior. The therapist's movement cues without touching make this a gestural prompt. Question 19. The ultimate goal of ABA is to produce socially significant behavior change that helps individuals. A. Eliminate all challenging behaviors. B. Learn to comply with all instructions. C. improve their quality of life. D. Become indistinguishable from their peers. Answer: C. Improve their quality of life. This question touches on the broader purpose and ethical goal of applied behavior analysis, while reducing challenging behaviors or teaching new skills, which might include compliance or skills to interact with peers, are common ABA targets. The overarching and ethical goal is always to make meaningful, positive changes that improve the individual's quality of life. This means helping them gain skills, reduce behaviors that interfere with their well-being or independence, and increase their access to reinforcement and participation in their community. It's about enhancing their overall life experience. Question 20. Which schedule of reinforcement is most resistant to extinction? A. Continuous reinforcement, CRF. B. Fixed ratio, FR. C. Variable ratio, VR. D. Fixed interval, FAVI. Answer: C. Variable ratio, VR. This question asks which reinforcement schedule makes a behavior most persistent and hardest to extinguish. Variable ratio, VR. Schedules are well known for producing high rates of response and being highly resistant to extinction. Because the learner never knows exactly which response will be reinforced, they continue responding for a long time even after reinforcement stops. Continuous reinforcement, CRF, is the least resistant to extinction because the learner quickly notices when reinforcement stops. Fixed schedules, FR and FI, produce pauses and are less resistant than variable schedules. VR is the champion of persistence. Question 21. When collecting duration data, you measure A. The time from the start of the behavior to the start of the next behavior. B. The time from a stimulus to the start of the behavior. C. The total time the behavior occurs from start to finish. D. The number of times the behavior occurs. Answer: C. The total time the behavior occurs from start to finish. This question defines duration measurement. Duration is simply how long a behavior lasts. You start a timer when the behavior begins and stop it when the behavior ends. It's used for behaviors that occur for a period of time, like crying, tantruming, or engaging in a specific activity. IRT is time between behaviors. Latency is time to start after a stimulus, and frequency is a count. Duration is all about the elapsed time within one instance of the behavior. Question 22. What is the function of a behavior that occurs because it produces a pleasant sensory experience for the individual without the need for anyone else to be involved? A. Tangible. B. Escape. C. Attention. D. Automatic. Answer: D. Automatic. This question describes the automatic function of behavior. Automatic reinforcement happens when the behavior itself directly produces the consequence that maintains it, without the involvement of another person. Sensory stimulation, seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, smelling something produced by the behavior, is a common type of automatic reinforcement. The key clues are pleasant sensory experience, and without the need for anyone else. Tangible, escape, and attention all involve consequences mediated by others. Automatic function is self-produced reinforcement. Question 23. When using a least to most prompting strategy, you start with A. The prompt you think is most likely to be successful. B. A full physical prompt. C. The least amount of assistance necessary. D. No prompt, and add prompts only if needed. Answer: D. No prompt, and add prompts only if needed. This question is about the least to most prompting strategy. The key phrase is least to most. This means you start by giving the learner the opportunity to respond independently with no extra help, a 0-second delay, or the natural cue. If they don't respond or respond incorrectly, you then provide a very small amount of help, the least intrusive prompt, like a gestural or verbal prompt. If they are still unsuccessful, you move to the next more intrusive prompt, only increasing the level of assistance as needed until they get it right. It's about providing the minimum amount of help necessary, starting with none. Question 24. If a child is biting their hand and the behavior analyst hypothesizes this is maintained by the sensory input it provides, this is a hypothesis about which function? A. Socially mediated positive reinforcement. B. Socially mediated negative reinforcement. C. Automatic positive reinforcement. D. Automatic negative reinforcement. Answer: C. Automatic positive reinforcement. This question asks you to identify the specific type of function based on the scenario and hypothesis. The behavior is hand biting. The hypothesis is that it's maintained by the sensory input it provides, which is a consequence produced directly by the behavior itself without others involved, making it automatic. Since this sensory input is likely adding something reinforcing, a feeling, pressure, sensation, that makes the behavior happen more, it's positive reinforcement, something is added. Therefore, it's automatic positive reinforcement. If it removes something aversive, like pain, it could be automatic negative reinforcement, but sensory input is typically considered added stimulation. Question 25. What is the main difference between a primary reinforcer and a secondary, conditioned reinforcer? A. Primary reinforcers are delivered before the behavior, secondary reinforcers after. B. Primary reinforcers lose their value quickly, secondary reinforcers retain it. C. Primary reinforcers are naturally reinforcing, secondary reinforcers gain value through learning. D. Primary reinforcers are used to increase behavior, secondary reinforcers decrease behavior. Answer: C. Primary reinforcers are naturally reinforcing. Secondary reinforcers gain value through learning. This question asks about the fundamental difference between primary and secondary, conditioned reinforcers. Primary reinforcers, like food, water, warmth, are effective as rewards because they fulfill basic biological needs or are inherently pleasant without any prior learning history. Secondary or conditioned reinforcers, like praise, stickers, money, tokens, gain their reinforcing power by being consistently paired with primary reinforcers or other established conditioned reinforcers. They acquire their value through association and learning. The other options describe aspects of reinforcement delivery or properties, but not the core learned vs. unlearned distinction.